Welcome to Let's Talk Color.
I'm Amy Wolf, Principal Designer at Amy Wolf Color and Design.
And I'm Amy Crane, Founding Designer at Amy Crane Color. We're both professional color experts who specialize in architectural color. We met while training, and years later, the conversation is still going strong.
We both live our lives immersed in color and design. We often agree, but sometimes we don't, because color is personal. Color truths, however, are universal.
In each episode, we'll unravel the mystery of choosing color for your home or business, both inside and out.
Okay, and we are back. Took a little bit of a break for the summer, and we're back today to talk about Modern Farmhouse. Very popular subject. You love it? You hate it? Somewhere in between? How about you, Amy? Love it? Hate it?
Ooh, toughie. I hate those black and white questions. I like some of them, and I think their location and context, it makes it, that's what it's really all about. So where is it, and why is it there? And all of that. I certainly like elements of it. It really comes down to how it's put together. You know, what are the details of it? You know, what are the parts? What are each of the parts? And how does it contribute to the overall look? I do want to say that I go to visit family on Long Island, and I'm from a really typical 1960s neighborhood where the houses were built mid-60s, and there's a few ranches, but mostly they're high or raised ranches, and another kind of very local vernacular kind of house called a splanch, which is a split-level ranch on sort of two levels plus a mezzanine in between. And each street has about three, with the occasional exception, about three styles of houses. They're very close. They're on, roughly a third to a quarter of an acre. And recently I went to visit my old family house, and there were two modern farmhouses, identical, next to each other around the corner from my mom. And boy, did they stand out like a sore thumb. They were much taller. The houses around them were smaller and older, of course. The starkness of the black and stark white was, they just stood out. They looked so inappropriate and awful. And I thought, wow, it's even here in a 1960s neighborhood that people are choosing, when they do a tear down or buy a parcel of land or something, that they feel that it's okay to do this. Like, I want this kind of a house. This is my dream home, my idea of a home, regardless of what's around me. And I think that's a mistake,
So were they both white?
Yes, identical houses. White.
Two identical white houses right next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that to me breaks the first cardinal rule when choosing exterior color. And that is, to kind of look around and see what's around you and try to create some variety and pick something different and be a little bit individualistic. But, and maybe that's my deep issue with Modern Farmhouse, is that it's lacking individualism. Mm-hmm. That there's black and white isn't leaving a whole lot of room for personal expression. It's kind of like, dare I say it, you're having a magnolia expression and not a you expression. I mean, so I think those two identical houses plop down like alien life forms in the middle of a 1960s splanch community, which I have to confess, I had never heard the term splanch until you and I were prepping yesterday.
I know, hysterical. I think it's very local. I think that builder might have even made it up.
So what I'm wondering is, did this arrival of two modern farmhouses identical to each other also get made up by a builder? I mean, it doesn't seem like any two individuals would choose to build identical houses right next to each other. I mean, unless they were sisters or cousins, I don't know.
They were spec houses, Amy, because
Yeah,
they sold at a different time.
Okay, so it was definitely some builder's idea.
Yep.
To put
Bad.
two identical houses. That is a bad idea. I mean, I just think I would feel weird buying them. But I guess, look, if you're really, really, really in love with Modern Farmhouse, which Lord knows everybody is, or lots of people are at least, maybe you do that at any cost, which includes sacrificing individuality, uniqueness in the area, and appropriate
self-expression.
Yeah, and appropriate context. I don't know. I kind of feel like every modern farmhouse. I like ranches. Every modern farmhouse should probably be sited on a minimum of 5 acres. How about that for a new rule?
Well, I certainly buy that, but I mean, I could certainly see it I'm fine with it on 2 acres. I mean, it's really about where the 2 acres are. I just don't see it in the suburbs. And in terms of, there are certainly, I'm from the New York City area. So some of the outer boroughs, of course, do have houses, but, they've been there for a really long time and all of that. They're different styles and different history and all of that. But there are other cities that do have inner city housing, like, nice inner city housings. And I don't see it there either. I don't see it in a city either. I really want you to at least be in the country, even if your property wasn't a farm. Be in the country. It should feel rural. For me, it's appropriate in a rural place,
Yeah. There's a community I've done a couple of houses in near here. It's a newer community. Probably those houses started getting built maybe 6 to 10 years ago. And it's interesting. It's been built slowly over time. They've expanded the streets and added lots. And there are a couple of modern farmhouse leaning houses. They're not stark black and white, but they've definitely got that modern farmhouse vibe. But, they're interspersed between some craftsman style houses, some four squares, some very traditional New England style farmhouses. There's enough variety on the street that I think there's room for that modern farmhouse look without it having feel out of place. And it's certainly suburbia. I mean, it's a lovely community. But I think that works. That's okay. But I agree with you. Downtown Northampton, where I live, I would not want to see somebody do a tear down and put up a modern farmhouse.
I mean, the longevity of it is really interesting, which goes to the question of if it's a trend or not. It's certainly a trend, but is it a trend that's here to stay for a long time? Maybe so. And then does that make it a trend anymore? Like black houses and dark houses, started off as a trend, has really been here, 10 years now. And I don't see the dark houses going. And by that, I don't mean just black, but, dark blue, dark brown, dark charcoal. I just don't see it going away.
Right. There was a time, I don't know how many years ago, when somebody mentioned Chip and Joanna, and I had to look them up because I didn't know who they were. And clearly they had already become a household name.
I did too.
And when did it all start? Do we have a date on Magnolia?
I don't know because, certainly, they had their HGTV show way before they created the Magnolia Network.
Okay.
Way before Magnolia.
Okay.
I have to at least go back in my records and see who the first client was who said, one of her design heroes was Joanna Gaines. And I had to look it up too, because I was not an HGTV person at all. All.
Me neither. It's too painful. It's way too painful.
There's so many reasons why it's just not elucidating, not interesting, whatever. However, I will say that since Magnolia Network has come, there's a number of Magnolia shows which I tune into occasionally, and they're fun. I mean, beach houses and cabins and old houses, and they're just, I guess they choose houses for the most part, houses and designers and people designing the houses that are very interesting to me, very current and very interesting. But that show on HGTV all those years ago, I wasn't tuned into at all. I mean, then when I heard of them, I checked them out and I thought, wow, they've got a charming thing going in terms of their repartee and all of that. And they probably spawned all of those shows about fixer-uppers and flipping houses and stuff.
Right.
So
right. What was their show called?
I forget.
Oh boy.
Was it Fixer Upper? It could have been Fixer Upper.
I don't know.
It could have been. We're showing our ignorance here.
Yeah, sorry, dear audience. This is one example of where you guys probably know way more than we do about Chip and Joanna.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about what its elements are?
Okay. All right.
It totally starts with board and batten.
Yeah.
Siding, board and batten siding.
And
vertical,
white.
And white, right? And the house has a lot of gables, usually in the front, at least one gable, but often more in the front. Almost always has a porch, front porch, often uses wood stain elements, maybe their porch posts, maybe their garage door, just a little bit of wood stain, not always, but sometimes. Full or partial metal roof, not always, but often. Anything else you can think of? I mean, I guess we should talk about the big thing, the elephant in the room, which is the use of black. That ranges.
Yeah.
And that ranges. Yeah.
And the black windows. Yeah, the black windows. I think that's probably one of the biggest market impacts that this look has had. 10 years ago, black windows were special order, big upcharge. And now it's become one of the standard colors. Black, white, gray, bronze, putty. That seems to be the, kind of the basic handful of colors. And certainly we see black being used all over the place in all kinds of contexts. I actually think black windows on a modern farmhouse are lovely. I mean, I think they're great. I think just enough black and not too much is what makes it work for me. I'm also, if I had my way with everything in the world, including house colors, I would always be going for a soft black. We just saw the Bear color of the year get announced yesterday. It's this peppercorn color. I love that kind of color. I love, Getty Gray from Ben Moore. I like these really kind of knocked back softer blacks. And so for me, I feel like you could get that modern farmhouse look with a softer black, but that strong black it's where it's at. It's certainly the standard stock color. And again, if I had my way and we all used a softer charcoal, we'd all be paying up charges for for custom window colors. But, yeah. And I guess, for me, this also goes back to our training with IACC, where we were taught that high contrast really isn't great for the eye. And I think that's much more of an issue on an interior and less so for an exterior. But I think it's just so deeply ingrained in me that less contrast is always going to be better. So a softer black and a toned white, to me, would still achieve that farmhouse look.
I agree. I mean, for me, I just don't go for when they put a black roof on this modern farmhouse. So black windows, white siding. I don't like the dark black roof. I think it might be indicative to some people of what a modern farmhouse is, but I think it is too contrasty. This is funny, you and me doing a switch, because I usually have no problem with contrast. I don't like the I don't like the black roof with it, and I much prefer to have a silver metal roof, natural metal or silver metal roof if you're going to have any metal roof, and otherwise have a darkish gray, not the black and white. And as to the windows, for me, thought a lot about it since we started talking yesterday, because funnily enough, I kind of glommed onto and started thinking, then specifying black windows for the interior, which is such a different decision than for the exterior. So I can think of very few homes I've worked on where I did specify a black exterior window. And the thing that about it for me is I don't want thick black sashes. If the style of the window, if the model and brand of the window is pretty thick and pronounced sashes, I do not want those thick black lines set into a white house. I don't like it. So if you're going to go black on the outside, for me, it's very thin sashes. It's also very popular in the modern farmhouse thing to do 2/1 or 4/1. So to have a different number of panes, top and bottom of your double hung windows, and to have just one big piece of glass on the bottom. Not everyone does it. Some people do it. I think it's very nice. And I think, again, without the mullions, muttons, grills, whatever you want to call them, creating the panes, less of that means less black. And so, again, I think that is something that I think makes for a nicer modern farmhouse look to me. And I also like when the architecture has to allow for this, but I like when the board and batten gets changed up on the house. So maybe it's narrower in the gable, and then there's a band, and then it becomes wider board and batten, a little bit of variety in the siding, even though it's all board and batten. As I said, not every house can handle that, but I think it's really pretty, and I think it's a nice design element to add to a house's exterior, which is otherwise all white.
Getting back to the windows, I think, thinking about window size, the format of the window. I mean, what you're talking about, I perceive that as a ratio. If the windows are small, then you're going to have more black. It's going to be more busy. If the windows are on the larger size, then the ratio decreases and it's a little more tolerable. What I'm noticing is black as a default, black as the current default, no matter the style of architecture. I've driven into the Boston suburbs a couple times this summer, and there's just black windows everywhere. It is like a default, regardless of the style of the house. And yeah, modern farmhouse smack in the middle of Boston in those, mid-level suburbs. They're not really suburbs. They're really kind of city. Not loving it. But I do see those black windows on houses with really bright colors. And I think that looks okay. But what bothers me and what's been a trickle down effect of the modern farmhouse look is that everybody seems to want black windows. So they sort of become a default. People select them without really thinking about it. And then, you're kind of stuck with something that, in my opinion, doesn't have a great deal of flexibility. I think it looks good with bold colors. I think it looks good with the modern farmhouse, looks good with white. But, I don't know. It's a funny thing. Something can be. So here's the thing. You can't cherry pick. The modern farmhouse has become incredibly popular, but I feel like you have to go all in and do it. Or not, don't cherry pick the ideas and try to put them somewhere else. So
I prefer it on mid-tone and darker houses, and I think there's a lot of flexibility there to use it. I just don't want to see it on pale houses. It's like I accept it on a modern farmhouse because it is, like you said, it's one thing. It's the whole thing. You buy the whole package. All right. So black windows, white house. So, I'm accepting it because it's part of that design, but I have to say I wouldn't put it on beige houses and tan houses. I wouldn't put it on light houses. I wouldn't put it on light gray houses. I don't really like it on light houses. I want the darker window on a darker house, a mid-tone to dark house. And I've got no problem with it with color. I don't think it locks you in with color at all. I think you could have a green house, a green gray house, you could have a blue house, a slate blue gray house. Anything for me that's nice and tasteful and appropriate for the architecture, as long as the value is there. I have a problem with the black fascia and soffits, which some people do, which just adds to the heavy outline of the exterior of the house. So maybe you've got a black roof and then you've got black soffits and fascia. And for folks who don't know what that is, it's sort of the trim boards that come right below the eave of the house. They are the eave of the house. They come below the roof. So the fascia faces you. It's that board that faces you. And the soffit is the board that is 90 degrees to it underneath, sort of creating a box, as it were. And I just think that, wow, that's just way too much black. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I read something lately about the modern farmhouse and why it has staying power. So I think we should talk about that a little bit. It is interesting to think about why people make this choice over and over and over again, and whether it's really because of the influence of Joanna Gaines or whether it is because it's easy. How many clients, Amy, do you get who call you or contact you to get interior color help? And they say, I just want white. I always laugh at that. I just want white, because I think white is one of the trickiest color neighborhoods to navigate.
Sure.
There's so many different whites. There's so many undertones. There's so much going on that, white can go wrong pretty quickly. But I wonder about this bright white, dark black, no variation, one choice, ones and zeros. It's black and white decision, and people take confidence and feel like they can just make the decision and have it be easy and it'll work.
Yeah. Although, I mean, there still is the decision of the white. So it doesn't take that complexity out of the decision. But I think in people's minds, it takes the does it go together anxiety away, because someone already decided that it was okay and it went together, and it wasn't them, and they didn't have to hire a designer to do it for them and whatever.
Yeah. Right.
I think it does mean home now for a certain demographic. I think that the millennials really ate up this modern farmhouse thing. And I think for many people, it means home. I mean, it's romantic. It's storybook. You could have and are living your life miles and miles away in every respect from a rural, country, farmy kind of existence. And yet, we're all so influenced by media and social media and what we see. And I think there's a little bit of a fantasy in there. I mean, there's a little bit of a fantasy that you want to fulfill when you create a home, your idea of home, your first home.
First nesting experience.
Yeah, either your first nesting experience, or maybe you had a starter home and then you were able to trade up. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
When you had a little bit more money to spend, and it could be closer to your ideal of the perfect home. And I think it does resonate for a certain demographic. I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong. If 56-year-olds are buying a new home, are they going for this? I don't think so. But I think the 42-year-old is. Making sweeping assumptions here, but
yeah, it's, what it is? It's idealism. It's an idealism that sort of glorifies this rural, simple, it's like a simple life, but somehow elevated,
I mean, romantic in terms of the romance of home, the romantic idea of what a home is, nurturing.
Kinfolk. I'm thinking of kinfolk as you say all this. Kinfolk certainly ties into all of that. It's also really interesting to me to think about the legs that this so-called trend has, or movement, or era. I mean, I guess that's what it is. If it lasts longer than a trend, then it becomes an era. We are in the era of the modern farmhouse. It's really interesting to me to think about what would have happened if we hadn't had the pandemic. What would have happened if people did not leave the cities to escape to the country, to be safe from, everything that was going on at the time. Because all that gardening and organic and beekeeping and this ideal vision of the rural existence, really, wholesome, safe, healthy, it really got legs. Really got legs during the pandemic. So it's funny. You wonder about whether it's a perfect storm or not.
Yeah, although the modern farmhouse has been here for 10 years, so way before that. I think you're right, Amy, and I think you also have to take it in the larger context of something we've talked a lot about, which is kind of what you get from the idea of homesteading, and people raise bees and they have flower, they have gardens, they're doing, they're organic, they're beyond organic. It's a wish for, you said it perfectly, it's a wish for a bygone era, before social media, before processed foods, when things were handmade. It kind of all ties together for me. It's just harkens back to an idealized or romantic vision, a romantic vision of what the past was.
I'm just saying, might it have fizzled out a little bit had it not been for the pandemic?
Yeah. Yeah. And, one of the most saved pictures on my Pinterest page is a house by a company called Wright Builders, WRIGHT Builders. I don't know where they are. It has been saved. I have gotten hundreds and hundreds of questions about the colors, and it's not my work. And I know the colors. They're Sherwin-Williams colors. The house is board and batten, or partially board and batten. It has gables. It is acacia haze from Sherwin, which is kind of a sagey green. Online, it looks sagey. When you look at the color, it's less sagey. But it has green. It has board and batten. It has full or partial metal roof, and it has wood accents. So it's, it's very much, it is the modern farmhouse. I mean, I do think the modern farmhouse goes beyond the white and black house. This is sort of the apex of it, or the icon of it. But the elements of that design are finding their ways into houses being built now or renovated now that still feel kind of modern farmhouse to me, but aren't white and black. Folks, you can go to my 2021 design trends on my website if you want to see it, or my Pinterest.
So, I mean, I guess following on what you've just said, Amy, it would be interesting to think about what would we do if we could wave a magic wand and direct modern farmhouse for the future. Like, where do we want to see this trend go? Is it going to go anywhere? Is it going to stay black and white? Is it going to pivot? Can I get my soft charcoal? Can I get my toned white? Can we reduce that contrast a little bit? No, we're not going to get a stock color in soft charcoal, right? That's not going to happen. If you want soft charcoal windows, we're going to have to custom order them, which is, an upcharge and extra time. And, who's got time for that, right?
Well, people also, I mean, as long as they're not vinyl, people also paint their windows. So,
Right. Yeah, actually, I mean, you make a really good point, because I'm thinking about new construction, and new construction is generally, vinyl or aluminum clad. So you're making a decision that lasts a long time. If you're repainting, then obviously you can do whatever you want. But I don't know, I'm having a cognitive disconnect around repainting, like taking, any house that has wooden windows that are being painted is an older style of architecture. And I kind of want to see that lean into its origin and its original architectural and design intent, and not see an older home get kind of reinvented as a modern farmhouse. You follow me?
I do. I've seen people do it, and I often don't think it's a good idea. They do it, or they They handpick the elements that work on the house. Like, let's reside in board and batten and paint it white, and let's paint our windows black,
Right,
for
right.
instance. And maybe their architecture will support it, maybe not. I don't want to see it on a craftsman or but I've seen that treatment on ranches. That's kind of big.
Yeah, yeah. And especially on a ranch where the roof tends to be more prominent. You don't have gables facing your front exposure. You've really got a big swath of roof there. So that's where I think, upgrading to a non-black, silvery gray, gunmetal at the very worst.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So thanks for tuning in and joining this conversation with us. We hope you've learned a little bit more about color for the built world.